Okay, let's get right into it. What are the Toronto Raptors doing? Well, I see three ways they could take this thing. Two are more likely than the other, but I have a way I'm leaning. There's three ways I think they could move to win now mode. The only way I see that happening is if they make a big time trade to acquire a star like Dame or someone who can bring them over the hump while keeping most of their current guys. The most likely one, considering they lost Nick Nurse and Fred VanVleet is a free agent, they don't know where he's going, is I think they move towards a reset and a rebuild. And then the last one, I think, which is my opinion, which might happen, considering they're Toronto, is they're going to stay mediocre until they find the right trade or the right moment to make a push for contention. Similar to what we saw 2016 through 2018, they were a good squad with DeMar, Kyle Lowry, solid roster all around 1 through 9. They traded big time for Kawhi, they kept most of their depth, that pushed them over the hump. They won a championship, right? Obviously, that was a once in a lifetime opportunity, but I could see them going in that direction. Who knows? Now we'll kind of break these down more. One thing they can do, we'll talk about trading for a star right now. They obviously have number 13 pick and a couple young guys. I don't know if they'd be willing to move on from Scotty Barnes or anybody. That's why I think this one is pretty unlikely, because if they wanted to acquire someone like Dame or whoever, they'd be needing to give up someone. And that could be Scotty Barnes, because Dame, Gary Trent Jr., OG, Siakam, and Jakopoto, that's a contending team in my opinion. All Dame really needs is Pascal Siakam. That's why I think if they move towards a rebuild, they've been very interested in the number top 3, top 5 pick. I think they want Eamon Thompson, one of the Thompson brothers, or they're obviously looking for Scoot Henderson at number 2, number 3, right? To pair alongside Scotty, which I think if they do move Siakam to Portland, I'm not sure how I feel about that, considering they have Jeremy Grant. Obviously, Siakam is a lot better than Jeremy Grant, offensively and defensively, but I think they just signed Jeremy Grant last season. They should see how it goes. And honestly, if I was Portland, I would move towards a rebuild, but I'm not their manager, mint. The more likely one, obviously, is the reset slash rebuild. If they get that number 3 pick and they keep their young guys, they can sign and trade Van Vliet, hopefully, similar to what they did with Lowry a few seasons ago. Hopefully, they can get some draft capital or some young guys to put on the roster. And then they can also do the same thing with Siakam, move him for some capital and some young guys, or even another piece to move later on for some capital. The one thing I'm curious about is they brought in a new coach, right? Which is why I think they're leaning towards this rebuild. Obviously, their coach has some experience coaching, but first time being an NBA coach, which can be a little bit different, but we've seen first time head coaches make big differences. So you never know. If they moved on, I'd hope they keep OG Anunoby. He's kind of young still. He's a great player. If you move him into more of an offensive role, he might be a little happier with staying with the team long term. And I've seen him get us 25 points a night, not a night, but about 18 a night, especially early this season when Siakam was out. OG took a little bit more of a role offensively, but he does have a lot of trade value, so maybe they do flip him for some pieces and some young guys. Some likely spots, I see Fred VanVleet and Siakam going. For VanVleet, I could see him going to the Clippers. I did have him for the Suns, but now that they got Bradley Beal, I don't think that's likely. I think they already are very out of capital and, cap space and stuff to trade for him. Another thing I could see is him getting traded to the Heat in exchange for Kyle Lowry. Then Miami will have a point guard. Kyle Lowry will be reunited with Toronto. Maybe they can snag a young guy or some picks out of that too. Obviously, there's rumors about the Lakers. I don't know how likely I think that is. LA, everyone's rumored to go to LA, but it doesn't usually happen, so I'm not sure. And then lastly, the big thing I think could happen this one is they stay mediocre. They could bring in a real backup point guard to back up VanVleet. They could use pick number 13, or even if they can trade up to a better one without using too much stuff, but use pick number 13, build a solid roster, and just be 6 seed, 8 seed, hopefully first round team, keep fans engaged, excited, keep them coming, buying seats. Honestly, I don't think that's much problem for Toronto considering they have one of the best fan bases in the league, but maybe that's what they want. It's a business at the end of the day. If you can get people in the seat, that's all you really need, right? And obviously, Toronto's not a huge free agent destination, which is why I could see them moving towards this. Having a mediocre roster for 3-5 years. Get Scotty Barnes to develop. Get pick number 13 to develop. Obviously, OG to develop more. Gary Trent Jr. is still young. Delano Banton's still young. They have a lot of young guys, you know. And then Jacopo, Fred VanVleet will be our vets by the time we're competing at this time. Or we could even move them for guys to fit the timeline. And then once we find a star on the market, we make a quick move, just like they did with Kawhi back in 2019, 2018 off season. And then if we can keep some of that depth, get a superstar, have a solid squad, they can push for contention for a couple of years to come, you know? It all depends. I think we'll find out this offseason where they move, or even they could do mediocrity for a year, or even half the season. At the trade deadline, they could move Siakam, VanVleet, whoever's on the roster, you know? The reason I think they'll go with the mediocrity way, though, is because we see a lot of teams now building through the draft, you know, the way you're supposed to build, with small trades here and there to fill in the pieces, right? Obviously, Denver just won the chip this season, and they were mostly homegrown, at least their two best players, and they would do small trades or free agent signings to fill in those holes. Aaron Gordon, KCP, Bruce Brown, stuff like that. But Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, Jokic, all drafted in Denver, right? Miami Heat, same thing. They got Bam in the draft. They got Tyler Hero in the draft. Obviously, Jimmy was a free agent signing, big free agent signing. And Miami's just known to find these diamonds in the rough, these great guys, right? And then the Warriors dynasty, apart from trading for Kevin Durant, they drafted Steph, Draymond, Clay, Kevon Looney. They drafted so many of these guys, and that's really what made them a great team. They signed Andre Iguodala. Obviously, the Spurs dynasty from way back when. Drafted Tim Duncan, drafted Ginobili, drafted Tony Parker, drafted Kawhi, drafted Danny Green. They drafted everybody. They had a great coach, obviously, one of the best ever, and that must have helped. But these homegrown guys building chemistry, building a continuity, building a culture, that's what can really make you a contender, right? It might not be instant success, but it's proven to work. And another team I think I see heading in this direction is Detroit. They've drafted some pieces. They signed Bogdan. I don't know if they'll keep him forever, but they slowly grow. They got Monty Williams on a huge, large deal, long time deal, and they're gonna build like that. I think Toronto could easily move this way and have some big things heading for them. But those are my thoughts for Toronto. Comment down below what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.